All right, hello, welcome everyone to DC on RMD, the Superman and Lois edition. I am Michael, your host, and we are back in the studio to cover the final season of Superman and Lois. Hello, David, how are you?
How's it going, everybody?
Steve should join us at some point during our discussion.
His hologram is booting up.
Yeah, I ripped his heart out,
You ripped his heart.
and then I stepped on it. David screamed horrendously.
Horrendously, like a girl.
He woke up the neighborhood. Yeah, David, I can't believe
I told you.
this is the... Well, hold on. Don't start pounding your chest already. I can't believe this is the final season. Like, it seems strange.
Dude, I get now upset at... I try not to listen to comic book fans now saying that there's no good DC TV show now.
Well, because they canceled them all.
And I'm like going, are you guys not watching Superman and Lois?
Most people that are comic book fans are probably not.
Yeah.
The thing that has made this show successful, though, is because it has appealed to a larger audience, which is what you need to do when you're a writer and director. You can't just appeal to your niche, to your core audience. If you want your show to have longevity, well, in this case, it didn't work for obvious company behind the scenes reasons. But this show managed to build up a very loyal fan base.
Yeah. And dude,
because the storytelling is so good that you can remove the superhero element from it, and it still is just a good, well-written melodrama that's centered around family.
Around Superman. And
well, I said if you remove the superhero element, that's still what you have.
Yeah. But like even on top of that, because of that, this has given us a show on Superman that arguably is the best. Better than Smallville, better than Superman and Lois back in the 80s. This is probably the best rendition story-wise of this character that's ever gotten. And not a lot of people are talking about it.
This is the best Superman story, period. And that's saying a lot, David, for both of us to say that, and I know Steve probably feels the same way. And the reason why that's such a big deal is because the three of us are hardcore Superman fans. Hardcore Superman fans. And that doesn't take away from Christopher Reeves and the greatness of the motion picture. And is it Superman the motion picture? Yeah. Superman the motion picture, as well as Superman 2, even Superman Returns. I consider that the real trilogy there.
Yeah.
There are wonderful things. Those are great movies. They're iconic films at this point. But if you look at the overall mythos, the Superman mythos, and how it was utilized, there is no question that this is the best Superman story we've ever been given.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, even to the point that I am willing to say that, number one, Tyler Hodgkin is probably my second favorite Superman. Like, after Christopher Reeves, there's Tyler. Because his rendition of Superman is really good.
I'm glad that you said he's the second, because a lot of people think that when we say this is the best Superman story of all time, people think we're also saying this is the best Superman. That's not what we're saying. Now, I will say this is the best Lois Lane we've ever been given.
By far.
The best Lois Lane, the most fully realized, complete character. In large part, the series has been told from her perspective. The story is about Superman and his family. But it's being told predominantly through the perspective of Lois, and that's the reason why this series has worked so well. You didn't have to worry about balancing out story arcs that equally favored Clark and then Lois. Just do a story about Superman's family through the lens of Lois, and you kill multiple birds with one stone. And that is continually the reason why this series works, is because of ideas like that. The writing room, Todd Helbing, the showrunner, has managed to create put together a writing room that just worries. Yes, they are getting the Superman stuff right, but their focus, David, isn't on the Superman aspects. It's just on telling a story.
Yeah.
And that ultimately is the reason why this series will be remembered favorably as the years go by. And yes, it makes me sad that we only have 4 seasons of this show and that this is the final season. But one thing about Superman TV shows and movies is they have a very long shelf life amongst fans.
Yeah.
A very long shelf life. Look at Smallville, still talked about within Superman circles.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Superman and Lois will be something that many of us Superman fans point to. In fact, if James Gunn's upcoming Superman movie isn't that great, you know what in fact, even if it is great, you know what we're going to compare it to? We're going to compare it to Superman and Lois, the series.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is like...
This is now, what's the word I'm looking for, David, when you use something as the example? The exemplar? The exemplar. This is the exemplar now. This is the target that you must defeat.
Yeah.
If you're making a Superman story, in my opinion.
This is your bar.
That's the bar. That's the word. The bar has been raised, right?
The bar has been raised because, like, I'm sorry. The fact that, yes, they've only been given 4 seasons, but this production team embraced it and basically said, okay, we may have been given only 4 seasons, but we're going to give you the best Superman story ever told.
Yeah.
And, like, the fact that they were able not just to actually focus on the atypical character narratives, but also embrace a lot of the comic book history mythos, bringing in the story of the death of Superman. I know for a fact when we first started covering this series, me, you, and Steve, particularly me and Steve, went back and forth saying, this is really dicey to cover this story because it's been done ad nauseum. What can you possibly do to kind of change the game when it comes to the story of the death of Superman? And just to give an idea, the first 2 episodes that they released for season 4, I feel give more almost emphasis than the comic did when it comes to the death of Superman. Because the fact that we get to actually, in the comic, we get to see what everyone's reaction is, the comic book world's reaction, you know, the death of Superman when he falls to Doomsday. And then, you know, you have the classic, the iconic scene of Lois holding Clark's body on the cover, right? And that story was told to kind of have the point of view of the entire world witnessing the death of Superman. Season 4 opens up with a point of view for Superman himself. This is what it's like in his final moments. He's fighting Doomsday, and the only things that are flashing through his mind is his family.
Yeah.
And dude, every time that he has this flashback of Lois, of the kids, and he's fighting Doomsday, it gets you more and more invested in Superman, and you're at the end you're hoping, even though you know the outcome. We all knew from the get-go this is the outcome, the death of Superman. He is going to fall.
Did we all know that? Because I disagree with you guys. Our season finale discussion, people can go back if they missed it, just scroll through the feed. We had all theorized what's going to actually happen with the final season. And I had said, I don't feel like they're actually going to go through with the death of Superman. Because the thing that this series has done so well is subvert our expectations. Every time they're about to do something, we're like, oh, they're going to do that. And it's completely different.
It's completely different.
Even the way they created Doomsday, which I still stand by, is absolutely genius. You still create Doomsday the way he was created, at least in my opinion, one of the better stories. There's various versions of how Doomsday was created, his origin story.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite stories is the idea that Kryptonian scientists just repeatedly killed this entity, brought him back to life, killed him again, and that created this inner hate of all Kryptonians, and that's the creation of Doomsday. Of course, there's more to it, but that's me paraphrasing the entire story in a nutshell. And now we see that's exactly what they did, but with Bizarro Superman.
Yeah, and Lex as the catalyst.
Right. So the show, even though it's walking into familiar territory, it's still doing it its own way. That's
Yeah.
why when you look at a lot of comic book, or I should say when I look at a lot of comic book movies and shows, the thing that I get tired of is just the derivative nature that, oh, well, here's an origin story. And also, you remember we've seen this before, but like 5, 6, 7 years ago, but then we rebooted it, we remade it, and here it is again. I didn't want that from Superman and Lois. I'm like, I don't want the same things. I don't want General Zod.
Oh yeah.
I don't want those things that we constantly see. And that's exactly where Todd Helbing and his writers were in terms of creativity. They're like, well, you know what? There's certain things we need to adhere to, but then there's also certain things that we can still take from Superman canon, from Superman Legacy, and let's just rework it so that it doesn't feel so expected.
Yes.
Because, David, most people, no matter what they say now, none of us were aware that we were watching a Doomsday origin story. We didn't know.
No.
Until it happened. How fucking awesome is that? That we didn't even know what we were watching until we were halfway through the episode that it actually happened. We're like, oh, is this going to be an origin story for Doomsday? Is this what we're watching? And then sure enough, that's exactly what we get. And because of that, David, I wasn't on the same page with you and Steve. I did not think that we would actually get a death of Superman. I figured we'd get a version of that. Maybe Jordan would die. Maybe someone else would die. But, David, they did it.
They did it.
They gave us a death of Superman story that didn't just rely on the shock of Superman, as you mentioned, but it relied on what has always made this series so strong. It's family.
Yeah.
The familial anchor. That is what always makes the emotions pop, that keep the emotions where it needs to be for the viewers to remain invested. And that's why the death of Superman in these 2 episodes were so impactful, because it was around family.
It was around his the motivations of Clark.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it too, is like a parallel that I thought about after I watched episode 1 and episode 2, how the death of Superman was treated is like, compare it to Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Do we have to? Do
Batman
we
v
have to?
Superman, because that was his that was the death of Superman storyline.
That
in
was
his opinion.
the laziest death of Superman.
Yeah,
story.
but if you think about it, all that Snyder wanted to focus on was the iconography
Yes.
of the death of Superman,
Right.
which is going to connect with the fans. And yeah, sure it did, but there wasn't any substance behind it, because like, we didn't feel anything. No one felt anything when Superman died in Batman v Superman, because, okay, you did the Doomsday story, and yeah, you did something different with Doomsday, but there was no substance about it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I don't want listeners to think that I didn't like Snyder's take. I do. I actually, one of the few fans, I think, that still stand by some of the things that Snyder did. I had no problem with Man of Steel. It wasn't quite the Superman that I would do. If I was writing it, it's not quite how I would do it, but I don't have problems with it ultimately. But if we're comparing things, David, like you're doing, there is no comparison,
There is no
really,
comparison.
when you're trying to compare Snyder's version with what Todd Helbing and his group of writers are doing.
Because like, and it goes to like what you were saying about how the stakes were high in the episode 1 and 2, because we were all going, oh, they're going to try to do something different. They're not going to do the death of Superman. Meanwhile, you know, me and Steve are like going, no, they could do the death of Superman. They got the characters in play to do this type of story.
Yeah.
It just depends on how they pull it off. And I was like saying like, no, they have to kill Superman in the very beginning, because they started the fight.
Yeah.
And the fight can't be that long, because Superman is going to get his ass whooped by Doomsday.
Yeah. David, ultimately the reason why that entire thing worked is because if you realize a lot of the other, you had mentioned this a few moments ago, and so I want to double down on that. Typically the death of Superman stories are from the perspective of the world.
Yeah.
You know, what what is his death mean? What does his death mean to the world?
To the world.
That's not a perspective we've seen
Yeah.
in this series. The perspective, and the reason why it worked that much better is because it's nuanced. What does the death of Clark
Mean to him
mean to his family?
and his family. Yeah.
What does it mean to his family? And yes, in that moment when he realizes he's not going to make it through this,
Yeah.
what does it mean to him? That's something, David, that we have never seen, and at least from what I can recall, from any Death of Superman story. It was the nuance. It was the perspective that was so unique and heartfelt. And Dave, I'm not an overly emotional guy, but there are times throughout these 2 premiere episodes where I'm like, Jesus Christ, I can't watch another one right now, because it was 2 episodes back to back is how they premiered it. And at the end of the first episode, I was like, well, I got to watch the second one because we're going to cover it. But I needed a break because it is emotionally taxing, right, Dave?
Oh yeah, and the best thing by far was, like, I remember watching the season premiere, and then a friend of mine who is a diehard Superman fan, and she was like totally against the whole Death of Superman storyline because, like many fans, she's burnt out on the whole Death of Superman because everyone's done it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first episode, she says, I don't know if I can watch the rest of this. I'm still crying. And I'm like, I just text her and go, exactly. You didn't. The beautiful thing about this was a story told through the eyes of Clark.
Yeah. And it's not just emotional and sad because of the death. It's over the last 4 years. And this is something we don't really cover a lot on this network for a lot of reasons. Romance movies. It's just rom-coms. We don't really cover romance or rom-coms. But I do enjoy them. I like movies. So I'm not picky. If a movie is good, no matter what genre it is, then it's good to me. David, this is probably the most epic love story I've ever seen in a TV show. That's another thing. And this isn't the forced usual CW naive, like adolescent view of love, that we get a lot. Like we like the Arrowverse has been plagued with
absolutely
very childish, immature relationships that I point to and say, I don't know any relationship that's like that. Then they give us this relationship that is, if you've been in love before in your life, you can relate to this.
Oh, yeah.
It's an epic love story about 2 people who will do literally anything for each other because of this deep love.
It's an honest look at a relationship.
Yeah.
Because
it's not perfect. They fight with each other. They don't always get along, Lois and Clark. But at the end of that, what is there that keeps them together and keeps them whole and keeps them consistently together? Love.
And it's the family unit too, because like it's a more realistic look at like what a relationship in a family setting should be like. Like even throwing their relationship with their sons, where it's like when Lois tells John to go save his dad, every single time they've done it in the season, it's that impactful
You
moment.
mean last season?
Yeah, last season where she tells him, go get your father. And then all of a sudden he just bolts.
Or when she told Jordan in episode 1, when they finally located the grandfather, and she's all, take me there.
Take me there. And it's like,
she doesn't hesitate, dude.
She doesn't hesitate, but that is honestly a really honest portrayal of a true person. They've actually made Lois Lane a actual fully dimensional character for a change.
The best Lois ever. Period.
Oh,
there's no comparison. She is the best Lois. She's the best written Lois. She's the best actor that's played Lois. She delivers. I mean, the last season I don't think we could say enough last season when it comes to her performance. You, me, and Steve both. Now, David, all of this is fantastic and everything. It's great. It's great writing, a great start to everything. But we have to remember that this actually is just a start. Yes, this is the final season, but Todd Helbing has said, if you heard the little brainiac, I guess you can say verbal Easter egg. that's not just us playing with you, because they've done that throughout the last 4 years. Well, they'll play with certain words and we're like, oh, what are they going to do with this?
They did
and
it last season.
Yeah, they did it with Doomsday. They literally,
Doomsday.
I think like the first or second episode, she said, this is going to be like a Doomsday type of day. And we're like, whoa, what does that mean? And then by the end of the year, we're like, oh shit, Doomsday actually is going to be in this. This is bizarre. So here we are again with a little Brainiac throwaway. And according to Todd Helbing, from a recent interview, he has confirmed that we're barely seeing the beginning stages of this season's story.
Yeah.
He said we've barely cracked the surface. He said Brainiac will be a major part of the story during the second half.
Because as good as one of the points that I really want to emphasize is one of the standouts I think this year is going to be Lex.
Without a doubt.
But
is he also the best Lex now?
I think he is.
Do we need to wait to see more? Because we've only seen him in, 5 episodes so far?
But Michael Kuntz, what he's been given as Lex, he's done more with the character than any other portrayal of Lex Luthor that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, I love Gene Hackman's portrayal, but Gene Hackman's portrayal was the comedic, mustache twirling villain.
Yeah.
And it was more of a comedic kind of pulpy throw to that character. Same thing with I'm sorry, his name
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey's portrayal was just a Gene Hackman portrayal of it.
Well, that was the point.
And that was the point. But ever since then, I mean, the portrayal of Lex has gone from, hate. The core concept is, I hate Superman. Here, they actually make Lex a bit more.
Once again, it's about Lois.
Yeah, they show him more of as a person, because he's not driven by the simple "I am jealous of Superman" route. No, I actually think this season he's going to be the foil to Lois. That's the focus. He's not going to be caring about Superman, at least now.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much on par with how we set the show up at the beginning. Even when the writers of Superman and Lois delve into so-called familiar territory, they never do what you think they're going to do.
Yeah.
Instead of having Lex Luthor be this end-all villain towards Superman, he can really give two shits about Superman. Superman is a means to an end for him. It's about his vendetta against Lois.
Yes.
Which makes it a little more interesting because it allows Lois to enter the story without derailing. Because when you have a story that's just about supers, it's kind of hard to find a place for an average character. So how do you do, when I say average, I'm talking about non-super.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the best way to bring and keep Lois in a position in the story that's important? Well, give her cancer like they did last year. And now here, have her be the target of Lex's ire. Now, I will say that it's hard when you're talking about Superman because there's been so many iconic performances at this point. It's always funny and silly that we always have to say who the best version is. But I think it comes with the territory. I think it's natural for us to want to start ranking. So, David, just to go along with what you said, yes, Gene Hackman's great. It's Gene Hackman.
It's Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex.
Kevin Spacey is just as iconic in terms of performance as Gene Hackman. He's great. Eisenberg, I didn't hate him as
much as
Lex.
I did.
Yeah, I don't think we really were given enough to really judge fully. Is he the worst? Yes. Rosenbaum, great from Smallville. But what they're doing with Michael Cudlitz, his performance of Luthor is very different.
Oh, it is.
It is taken a bit from. They are taken a little bit from various comic book storylines, which is fine. That's probably the best way to shape a character like this. Take some of the best things that you like. The post prison Lex, which has always been one of my favorite versions because he's more hardened.
Yes.
And that's one reason why I love Kevin Spacey's take from Superman Returns, is it was post prison, and the fact that he shanked
You
Superman
shaved
with kryptonite
Superman.
was pretty gangster, let's be honest. But Michael Cudlitz, I have to wait until the end to be fair. But so far he is the best.
Because like there's so much more he's given for that character.
Yeah. And I will say I was a little hesitant when they announced that he would be playing Lex, not because he isn't a great actor, but I didn't really like his role as the redhead dude in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
He was he was corny. The character was corny. I didn't really find him all that interesting, but fuck, dude. Totally different.
Totally different.
And that's how you know you have a good actor, is when you can't even, I don't even recognize him from The Walking Dead.
Dude, that end scene with him. That end scene with him and Lois, where he just puts it out there just as it like the whole reason why he's doing this is because of his hatred for the fact of what she's taken away from him.
Okay, so he's trying to turn the kids against Lois.
Yes.
Because that is what he feels Lois did to him with his daughter, which is his whole motivation is because of the loss of time he had. And in that loss of time, he lost his relationship with his daughter, who, as we are led to believe, will not speak to him. So that moment when, I believe it was episode 2, when Jordan tries to steal Superman's heart.
Yes, dude.
And suddenly we're in the midst of a Saw film where Lex is a combination of Saw and Scream.
Scream, yeah.
Where an AI voice or an operator voice is speaking to Lois in the phone saying, your children are going to die, but you can save one. Press 1 for Jordan, press 2 for Jonathan. Now, she pushed a number.
We don't know who.
We don't know who, Dave, and that is going to come back to bite her in the ass. And I think that is that one moment that we're all waiting for when Lois told her father that Lex is trying to turn her children against her. That's going to be it.
Yes.
Whoever wasn't the number she chose is going to be, what the fuck? I mean, I know I would.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. That's why I like about also what this team has done.
And
for
to be
Superman
fair to Lois, she didn't want to. It was like, no. But then with 1 second left, what are you going to do? When the voice says, if you don't pick, they both die.
They both die.
Wouldn't any rational human just pick a number?
And the thing that cracks me up is like every single season this team has done this.
Yeah.
Where we know that everything they do matters. Every little tidbit. It goes back to what you were saying is like they'll do like that cheesy tidbit. Oh, this is going to be a doomsday for Clark. Yeah. Or like particularly with this one where they don't do the name track of Brainiac. They're not fucking around.
Arrow and Flash fucked with people so much to where it exasperated fans because we're like, okay, enough with the Easter eggs.
The ball teasing.
Yes, because they literally never delivered on any of those things they were doing.
But here
they always end up delivering. They're not just fucking with us.
And it's not just with the core characters too. They've also proven it with the side characters.
Yeah, and like you said, the elements like choosing which son you want to live. It's what's that narrative example people use? Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
If you see the gun at some point in your movie, then you're going to have to use the gun. So with Lois or Superman and Lois, that's seems to be the rule they live by in that writing room. Chekhov's gun. We're not going to just show Chekhov's gun and not deliver. If we mention or show Chekhov's gun, it is going to play a part at some point. And what's even better about the writers, Dave, is not in that episode. It's not even one episode later. It is sometimes at the end of the season when we have forgotten and suddenly we're like, oh, yes, that's right. And that's why this show continues to work and continues to subvert our expectations.
Because at the end of the day, they never forget that what they're building with each character.
Yeah.
Like when Lois is given with that decision, my mind started racing because I'm going, okay, Jordan and Jonathan's story up to this point has been Jonathan has been the older brother kind of looking out for Jordan. Then Jordan got powers. Then Jonathan had an insecurity complex because he doesn't have powers.
Yeah.
And then it's his younger brother that has to save him now. And Jordan, meanwhile, Jordan has to deal with the fact that, he does have all the powers of his dad. So like he is better than his brother in a lot of regards. He's superhuman.
Okay, so David, since you brought it up, we have continually talked about Jonathan Kent as this character who is just balanced, adult beyond years in a lot of ways, usually makes good decisions. He's made a few poor decisions with the drugs early on because of it. He had some insecurity issues because he was the go-to like example of the best son. He was the football player. He was the son. And then suddenly Jordan is the one who has powers. The for a lack of a better word, the nerd.
Yes.
So he has been struggling with that, with his own self-esteem, but he has found himself. And in finding himself, especially in these opening 2 episodes, he is a cross between his mother and Clark, the best versions of both of them, which leads me to finally theorize that this will be the season where he becomes the real Superboy. I'm not saying they're going to sideline Jordan.
Yeah.
But I feel like Jordan will find himself and become a better superhero because it was made clear in these 2 episodes that he is not ready and he's not what he's supposed to be.
Yes.
Everyone's disappointed with him. Debatably, he is the reason why his father died.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sorry. When Lex crushes the heart in front of him, that was soul crushing.
Oh, my God, dude. Talk about... Now, I have my problems with that actor. He's not... He's good, but at times, I think purposely he plays the role a little hokey, and I think that's the point because he is a Superman-esque character.
Yeah.
But a man doing it comes off better than a kid at times, and I don't always buy some of the things he does.
And I don't think we're supposed to.
Yeah, but in that moment... when Lex stepped on Superman's heart in front of him, that sheer scream of despair. I mean, hats off to that kid.
Oh, yeah.
Because that scream, I felt his pain.
Oh, yeah. That was the moment that basically, I honestly think, just like what you were alluding to, I think Jonathan is going to epitomize what Superboy is.
And in doing
Jordan's
so,
going to have the powers. Jordan's going to have the power.
No, I think Jonathan will become... I think he'll have superpowers.
By the end?
I think this is the season where he gets them. And I think in doing that, it's going to help Jordan become a better hero. I think the 2 of them will work together to become the ultimate super boys that work together.
That's what I think.
Because isn't that...
be a team.
Wasn't that what isn't that what Todd Helbing said, I want to say, in the first season, that this was his version of the Super Sons?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Super Sons were Robin, Damian Wayne, correct?
Yes.
And Jonathan Kent. So we don't have Damian Wayne. So it would make sense that Jonathan becomes that Damian character. Now, he could still be a mere mortal and become that, just like Damian Wayne. We know that he was given a suit last season.
Yes, he was.
But that also feels, I remember saying that feels a little weak. Like, oh, here's a suit, buddy.
It's a little hokey.
Yeah, here's a suit. Now you can have power. That feels forced and contrived.
Yeah.
And also, if you're the son of Superman, do you want to wear a suit to have power? That's cheating. So I do think that they are going to give him powers this season. And in doing so, it's actually going to help smooth out Jordan's rough edges, because the only person that really can get through to Jordan is Jonathan.
That's the thing that I basically feel is going to be the dynamic, more or less. I don't foresee Jonathan getting any powers, but he's going to be the kind of like the soul of what Superboy is. You know, he's going to be the one that basically
the conscience.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Jordan's going to be kind of like I hate to say it, the hammer. he's going to be the hammer that Jonathan uses. And like, that's how the Super Sons dynamic is where you have a character like Damian Wayne / Robin taking Jonathan Kent under his tutelage, and basically, yeah, he's younger than him and he may not have powers, but he's hella smarter than him.
David, but is there a greater fear here? Now, I'm going to broker this conversation, but I don't even know if I agree with my own thoughts here, but I'm going to say it just because. Because in a lot of ways, if what I'm about to say does in fact come true, it does feel like it would go against the optimistic underlining of this series. Even when we're in doom and gloom, there's still the Superman optimism.
Yeah.
Can we have an optimistic series if a character falls morally,
Absolutely.
makes bad decisions? Because it seems like they're setting Jordan up to make some really bad decisions.
Absolutely.
Because Lois said, I mean, she said, "You're not your father." And then when she realized she hurt his feelings, she said, it was, and I'm a parent, so I know how parents say things. She's all, "Well, at least not yet."
Not yet.
Which was like, good luck becoming your father. She also brought to light, or I should say reminded us, when she was talking to Lana, all of the bad decisions he's made, all the decisions he's made for egotistical reasons.
Yeah.
For regions of, delusions of grandeur. He did it for fame, for validation. He hasn't, at least how Lois put it in her interpretation, he hasn't really done anything to save people for the simple fact of saving people.
Yeah.
He has been doing it for his own glorification. Why do you have a mother say that unless it's going to pay off, unless this bad character is going to pay off in some way down the road? Is he going to do some bad things? Maybe not be a bad guy, but is he not going to be Superman? Is he going to make decisions that actually make Superman frown in a similar fashion that Batman does?
Yeah, look bad. And
you get what I'm saying?
Oh no, absolutely. And I think they will, because they've shown that they don't have problems with, especially the past 3 seasons, having some of their main characters who are quote unquote good guys, making bad decisions and learning from them. That's the key.
Right.
They have to learn from them. They did it with Jonathan's story since season 2. Season 2 and into season 3, Jonathan was making bad decision after bad decision, getting involved with.
It's because he always picks the wrong women.
Picks all the wrong women,
right?
unfortunately.
Jonathan's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he always picks the bad girls that bring him down.
And he makes bad decision after bad decision. And I think that basically that's going to be the catalyst where it's like Jonathan knows about making mistakes and then trying to redeem himself, so to speak, because that's what happened in the end of season 3.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up redeeming himself because he started more or less focusing on working with Steel and focusing on his own merits.
He's trying to find himself. He's been struggling for at least a couple seasons. He's been struggling with identity issues.
Yeah.
Like, how does he identify? When you're the son of Superman and your brother has powers and your mother is Lois Lane, 2 famous parents, and you're just some mediocre dude.
Yeah.
That's pretty much his story for the last 3 seasons. So this season, I feel, is going to be different. I think we've had a guy who has worked through those insecurities, and he's finding himself.
And then meanwhile, his brother is just all over the goddamn place.
Well, didn't they set the season up? They haven't really done much work on this since the premiere, but wasn't he on the spectrum?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the entire point, that he was on the spectrum, that he was not Asperger's? Yeah, Asperger's, right? But we don't call it that anymore. It's just on the spectrum.
He was
right?
on the spectrum, and and Jonathan was always watching after Jordan.
Yeah, so obviously he's going to be struggling. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. They just might need to do a better job reminding us of that, because they have not really touched on that much, have they?
Not yet, but I think after this episode, after the second episode, I think this is where we're going to start seeing Jonathan take more hand with Jordan.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you, that scene where Jordan, that has to be the biggest fail in his life. Because essentially Lex mocked him for trying to save the day. and basically put him in his place.
Dude, that was so gangster when Jordan confronts him in the restaurant.
Yes. And Lex is just like, whatever.
And Jordan's floating like a super character towards him. Okay. And the framing of the shot was so perfect because the framing said it all. All you saw was Lex Luthor's feet walk towards Jordan like he's not afraid.
Yeah.
And you see Jordan, who's floating, back away as Lex Luthor continues to walk towards him. The sheer villainy of Lex instills fear into a person who could take his fist and kill him in an instant.
Yeah.
And yet that's how much fear Lex instills in someone.
Yeah.
That it makes a super back away.
Because it put him in his place where it's like, you're not dealing with another kid. You're not dealing with another bully. Like, up to this point, Jordan has to dealt with high school drama with bullies.
Yeah.
This is not a bully you're dealing with anymore. And I love that scene because it put it into perspective for Jordan, because he's like going, I'm not used to dealing with this.
Yeah.
Because this is what my dad deals with. This is the villains he deals with. You know, the fact that his dad has to deal with a character like Doomsday, and there's no way Jordan can actually deal with Doomsday. And then this is his quote unquote arch nemesis that he's dealt with and has basically dealt with his dad in nauseum.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, just like, that's the thing I really liked about that scene, because it put into perspective about Jordan's still a kid. And I can imagine a kid getting really intimidated by something like that.
Yeah. And that was the point.
And that was the point.
The show is immaturity. The show that he is, in fact, a kid. That it takes more than just power to be the hero that you need to be.
Yeah, you can float around all you like.
Yeah. I really liked what they did. Overall, these 2 episodes were just so powerful across the board. Not only were they just emotionally just taxing in a great way, but it was just written so well, a fantastic setup. We are dealing with a drastically shortened season because the CW and Warner Brothers and their magnificent genius decided to cancel one of the most successful Warner Brothers shows or DC shows of all time. One of the highest rated, consistently highest rated CW superhero show in decades. Well, decades, in years.
Years. Take it in years.
And they're canceling it because Warner Brothers can never get their head out of their ass.
It doesn't fit our plan, Mike.
That being said, David, we were all a little nervous knowing that we were only going to have 10 episodes. Hey! Knock it off. Get in the house now. Go lay down. She's barking at the dumb neighbor dog that never goes away.
Oh, yeah.
Go. I'm more mad at the neighbor dog that they never watch. They keep that dog outside all day. All right.
Okay.
Let me start over.
Got it.
What was I saying?
You're talking about WB.
Okay. So we were all nervous knowing that we were only going to get 10 episodes in a final season, and we felt like we were, even though the 3 seasons have been so great, we still had a feeling that we're barely getting started. How can you end your show? But the way they set it up with those opening 2 episodes, the amount of ground they covered in roughly, 95 minutes?
Yeah.
Was everything they needed to do in order to calm my nerves and let me know that the next 8 episodes are going to be more than enough to bring this story to an end. And Todd Helbing had mentioned in an interview, and I thought this was a great way to get people mentally prepared and not to worry. He said that this will be the only Superman story ever that has 100% complete closure. We have never been given that.
No.
So that made me happy too. And then the actress that plays Lois, what was her name? I always forget her name. Elizabeth Tulloch. She also said that every single character has the appropriate amount of closure and that no one watching the show will feel cheated or slighted. So, Dave, that then answers our concerns. How are they going to bring all of the characters over the last 3 seasons, like Lana Lane,
Oh, there's so many.
Sarah Cushing, John
Yep.
Henry Irons. How are we going to bring all these characters that they had been setting up? Because Superman and Lois is, for all intents and purposes, is an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
So when the news was released that they're pretty much letting every single character go with the option, well, not every, they kept 4.
Yes.
The family, the Superman family,
The
is who they
important ones.
kept as full-time actors. Everyone else was given the option to return in some capacity, but they would not be considered full-time cast moving forward. They would be essentially guest appearances. So that made me and you and Steve a little concerned. Like, well, chances are then we're going to lose our actors because a lot of the actors don't want to come back for 1 episode or 3 episodes. But apparently they have everyone on board and everyone will come back for 1 or 2 episodes. In fact, Sarah Cushing and Lana Lang were both in the 2nd episode and they had big parts. But what did they do, David? They didn't go off on these little narrative tangents. They used them to strengthen the family story.
Yes, it became more of a focus on the Kents
Yes.
than anything else.
And if they keep doing that, which, to be fair, that's pretty much what they've done every season.
But Mike, don't you want Kyle to come back?
Well, you know what? Not really. But I have a feeling we will see him at one point.
Oh, absolutely. I think
You
so.
can't just not have him and Chrissy Beppo. You can't have them not come back for at least an episode. And if they don't come back, then they'll probably say something in passing. Like they moved to have their illegitimate bastard child someplace else that won't embarrass poor Lana Lane for the 30th time. What a dick. You remember? Dude, what a...
Dude, wait a minute. He's a dick, but if I'm not correct, he was your favorite character.
Eric Valdez?
I thought you said you like...
Kyle Cushing?
Yeah, Kyle.
Dude, he's
I thought
never
you liked
Dude,
Kyle.
where have you been the last 3 years, David? I have literally said he is the biggest annoyance. I do find myself conflicted because I do find him interesting at times.
See?
But God, what a loser. What a loser character.
He goes from
Had
Lana Lang
the hottest wife ever.
to Sarah.
Yeah. But, you know, listen, Lana Lane is now hooked up with irons. I'm good with that. At least someone will enjoy those big old titties.
You don't want to imagine Kyle having his way with those.
He
titties,
doesn't
do you?
deserve it. Is there anything we've missed, David?
I don't
We've
think
pretty much covered it all.
I mean,
what lies ahead, perhaps? Do you have any theories quickly that you'd like to cover
there's
before going
so
into your
many.
final thoughts?
There's so many, but the big one is the Brainiac stuff. Like, how are they going to bring him in? And one of my favorite ones that I thought about and actually saw a lot of people talking about is the fact that the hologram, the Kryptonian hologram, is going to be the thing that turns into Brainiac.
Oh, yeah. That could work.
And it could work.
Let's clarify. You brought up something that annoyed me. A lot of people seem to think that because, and tell me if you saw this as well, or if this is how you interpreted it, Dave. The Fortress of Solitude depiction of Kal-El,
Yeah.
Clark, was not actually him. There were a lot of reviewers saying that Clark is currently in stasis, and the only way he can communicate is through this technology, the hologram, in the Fortress of Solitude. But first off, that shows your lack of knowledge when it comes to the Superman lore, and also it shows that you haven't been paying attention to this show, because they literally explain what those holograms are.
What they are.
They are the essence of someone who has died.
Yeah.
They're dead. But because of the AI technology, it takes their memories and forms it into an artificial intelligence that then can interact with whoever's in the Fortress of Solitude.
Yes.
So Clark is dead. That is simply his memories that have merged with the AI technology to now manifest itself as an image of Clark, and he will now interact with you. And for all intents and purposes, yes, it is Clark.
Yeah.
But Clark is dead.
Clark is dead. His heart is gone. Like, Lex made sure of that.
Yeah.
So,
So do you believe that Doomsday will stay bad? Because you have to remember that Bizarro Superman was good.
yeah.
He was a good Superman with a good heart. In a lot of ways, he was just like our version of Superman, except he made a few mistakes with his family. So that being said, is that version that was used to create Doomsday, is he still there? Is there goodness in him?
That's the other story that's interesting, because I'm hoping to actually see a story between Lex and Doomsday, because like for a lot of comic book fans, the story in that just came out a couple of years ago with Forever Evil in DC, where Lex had Bizarro and he created his own Bizarro, and that whole story was like so good because it was like Lex became protective of Bizarro, and they had like that almost kind of like Frankenstein's monster type of relationship.
Yeah.
And in the end, my favorite in the comics of Forever Evil is Lex basically when Bizarro is killed, Lex basically has this moment where he's my monster.
Right.
And I'm like thinking, I want to see that because they have to do something with Doomsday at this point.
I have a feeling that these are my broad stroke predictions. Okay. Doomsday will have a change of heart, because we still need to bring Bizarro Superman's story to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And it'll be a sad story, but I feel like there's something still there. And it may take his kids, or at least this version of his kids, or perhaps Lois, to spark something in him, a memory of his
who
own,
he was.
of his own family, and of who he is, that reminds him. That's one broad stroke prediction. The next is we will get Brainiac, which
We will.
I don't think that's too much of a prediction, but I'm going to say it. And then I believe Superboy, Jonathan will also become a version of Superboy. He will finally gain powers.
He'll get that leather jacket.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this, David, are you ready?
Okay.
I'm going to give this premiere 97%. Now, mind you, David, I have never given anything 100%. There's been a few Supernatural episodes. But outside of Supernatural, I've never given anything 100%, except an episode of Superman and Lois. I believe it's second season when we saw the origin story of Superman and Lois. Remember when they went back and showed us how they met?
Flashbacks, yeah.
And their entire epic love story and how they came together and had the kids. And I mean, if you're a Superman fan, fuck, dude. If you're just a fan of television, that is 100%. So that's quite the bar. I was thinking of giving these episodes 100%, but I don't want to get into the habit of just throwing things, or giving things 100%. So 97%. Very good, top-notch writing. It's unbelievable this is on the CW.
I'm going to make the argument why I'm about to give my score, because as I've alluded to earlier, this has taken something that a lot of us comic book fans felt you can't do anymore because we're all bored in nauseum of the death of Superman.
Right.
They were able to take that story and add a punch to it, where it goes into like what we were talking about. The story of Death of Superman was a viewpoint of what the world thought watching Superman fight to the death and fall to Doomsday. Here, it's a much more nuanced and self-reflection on the viewpoint of Superman. What is it? What's that first episode to me? Like for you gave 100 to the episode where they showed the origins of Superman and Lois. To me, episode 1 was a beautiful look at like, what does it mean to be Superman in that moment that he is going to die? Where we always see the heroes win the day, but here in this regard, we know Superman's going to die, but we don't know what the ramifications and what it means to that character. Why is he fighting for that to the death in this regard? Here, they actually told that story where I thought the flashbacks of Clark getting punched every single time, and you hear that thud and it goes into the flashback, and you see, it's either him and Lois, him and the kids, everything they've gone through for the past 3 seasons, and he's getting pummeled by Doomsday, but he's still like trying to fight on. And when they get to the point where his eyes start glowing red and it just fades out because he doesn't have any more left in him, and he just dies.
Jeez.
And it's to me, that's my 100. That's how you tell the story.
So you're giving this
Superman.
100.
I am going to give the season premiere as 100.
Okay.
Because this actually is how the death of Superman should have been told.
There's something we didn't mention, we didn't talk about, and we should mention it because this was CGI heavy.
It was.
The visual effects were great. Doomsday.
In my opinion, yeah.
I mean, listen, there are moments where you're like, oh, okay, you can see kind of the budget restraints come into play.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But overall, the imagery of Doomsday is great.
Best
the
rendition.
Fight scenes between Superman and him are not cheesy. They do a great job with it. Again, there are moments where the budget does come into play. You can tell if you know what to look for. But overall, it looks damn good, especially, again, remembering the context of the network that it's on. You're on the CW, and not only that, Warner's increased the license because they're assholes for the final year, and CW has made it a point to cut back on the budget of all their shows, including Superman and Lois. That's why they had to cut the cast and cut the episode order. So despite that, they were still able to give us a really great fight scene between Doomsday and Superman. All right, David. Oh, one last broad stroke prediction, David. We will see Solar Man make his live action debut yet again.
I thought you were going to say Richard Pryor, but it was going to be
and
played by...
we will also see Superman's bad.
Superman's bad.
Yeah. I just came back from the Pentagon. Please. That'd be awesome. There's vodka in it now. Like, come on. Give us something.
Give us something.
Give us something from Superman. What is it? 3?
Superman 3. Superman 3.
Yeah, give us something from the shitty Supermans. Come on. 3 or 4. Let's make some jokes. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back. And we're doing these weekly, so you're not going to have to wait.